Hi, I'm Cindy Golding, and we have Golding Sweet Maple Farms. We've been doing maple syrup since about 91. We moved out to the farm in 94, and then we ramped up our production. And you can find us online at sweetmaplefarms.com. Gigi Golding is my granddaughter who's here helping me now. She flew up here from Texas, and it's rare that she gets to help with maple time. They like, whenever they come in the summer, they want to take maple syrup home with them, but this time she gets to help make it. So it's something anybody can do at home. If you have one maple tree in your yard, you can get a tap and you can get maple syrup at home. It's very easy to do. Drill. This is a 5/8 inch drill bit. So we use the Brayson bit. Some people use power drills. I've learned that the power drill can burn the tree, so we do it the old-fashioned way. Then you need a tap, and you have a tap set. You have a hammer. All right, Gigi, come here. You're going to get to do this.
Okay.
We're going to drill in right here. Okay?
Okay.
Set your jug down. We're going to drill in right there, and we're going to drill in that far.
Okay.
Lean into it. Put it against your tummy. Put it against your tummy. Lean straight in. Straight in. Go straight to the tree. You got to go straight. So as she drills, I'm watching the wood. We check the wood to see if it's damp. Keep going. We want to be in the tap wood, but not in the heartwood. If we get into the heartwood, we can damage the tree. Just a little bit. It's getting damp. A little bit further. Yep, it's getting damp. Just lean into it. Push into it. A little bit further. See how it's now getting damp? I don't know if you can see that. See the moisture? Okay. All right, now go backwards. So now she's going to take the drill out. All the way out. And then we're going to clean out the hole. Clean all the stuff out because it'll plug up the tap. Dig it in and get it nice and clean. Now, the old-fashioned way was to find a stick and clean it out, but a brush does a much better job. Okay, see the sap? See it's coming out? See the sap running out of the hole? Okay, now you have a hook that comes with it. But you got to make sure you put the hook on before you put the tap on, because then you won't have anything to hang your jug on. All right, here, Gigi. That and this. Tap it in.
Like this?
Uh-huh. And pound it in. We want to make sure, no, put it in. We want to make sure that the sap is going through the tap and not around the hole. Keep going. Let me see. That's good. See, the sap is starting to come out. Oh, go a little bit deeper. It's still coming around the hole. You don't want the sap to run out around the tap. You want to make sure your tap is in good and tight. Good. Okay. Now we get our jug. So you'll need a tube, something for it to run into the jug. Put the jug on, and then we hook it to the hook. And we're good to go. And by this afternoon, since this tree is running now, by this afternoon we may have, if the sunshine stays out, we may have a whole gallon of sap out of here.
This one's still going.
That one's dripping, but we're going to leave it until it gets a little bit more in it. So the old-fashioned way you'll see pictures where they have pails on them. Those are tin pails, and those tin pails can tend to have some lead in them. So we have decided to use the jugs. It is plastic, but it's cold. So plasticizer won't go into the sap because it's cold out. never tap in the same tap hole because it's got scar tissue. Just like if you get a cut yourself, it gets scar tissue. People, oh honey, can you go get a longer hook? People think that it might hurt the trees, but it's just like giving, here I got it, never mind. It's like giving a blood transfusion. It sap, it's for the tree, but you can take a little bit out every year. But you want to tap at a different place. It's okay, I put the hook in a different way. You never want to tap in the same place, and so one of the things that happens is we have the trees. I always have to walk around a tree and see where did I tap it before. You want to tap anywhere from about 2 foot off the ground to 4 foot. You don't want to really go any higher than that.
Is that for the protection of the tree, or?
Well, it's where you get the most sap. The problem we have is our deer love to lick the dripping sap. So out east, they run all those tubes. You see all the tubes in pictures and everything. We tried it one year. The deer run through here and they rip the tubes out, and then your sap is just running on the ground. So we have gone back to just, we tried that. We thought it might be easy, but in Iowa, we have a lot more nature. We have a lot of critters out here that really love sap. So
You can walk over here, you can see there's other scars from...
yeah, there's one. So you walk around the tree and you see where we have there's one, but it's grown over. There's one that's grown over. You can see where it's been tapped. Now an interesting thing is the Indians in this area used to make syrup, and they would trade it with the settlers. And so, but they did it very differently. They did it in big stone troughs, and they did it over wood fires. So a lot of sugar bush, a lot of places where they call it a sugar bush when you have maple trees that make up the most of the forest, then it's called a sugar bush. And most places that make a lot of maple syrup, they'll have what they call a sugar shack. They'll have a building outside where they take all the sap to it, they boil it there, and it's a wood-fired stove. And you have to be doing an awful lot to be able to do that, because when you're making syrup, it's a 24-hour job. You can't, if you're on a wood stove, you don't turn off a wood fire like you can a gas fire. And while it's boiling, if you have one of those sugar shacks and you're making sap, you have to have somebody out there 24 hours a day. And that's what they do out east, where they make a lot of syrup out in New Hampshire and Vermont and Quebec and all those places. They have people in there in the sugar shack 24 hours a day because the sap can burn very quickly. We do ours on a gas stove, so I can turn it off and go to bed and start again in the morning.
So what is the season for tapping? How long will you go to?
Every year, so everybody asks me, when do you tap a tree? So there's only one, there's a very short window of time, and Iowa's tapping season is very different than the tapping seasons in Vermont and New Hampshire. We have very different weather patterns here. So here, it's after winter, after the deepest freeze of winter. So we get our deep freezes in December and January. A few years ago, we were able to tap trees, when we first started, we were able to tap trees in January. So we were tapping trees January 24th, 25th, in that time frame. Well, it has gotten colder. There have been a couple years recently that we haven't been able to tap the tree until sometime in March. So what does that mean? We have to have sunshiny days like we have today. The temperature has to be above 35 degrees. And it has to have been after we have our deep freeze. But the trees they're of nature. God made them that way. If it's like the sap isn't running very much today. Yesterday we had 42-degree weather. The sap didn't run at all because it had been so cold. The other thing that is interesting, and so then it will run until the trees bud. So we didn't really tap trees this year until February 23rd. It may run until the end of March. It depends on when the trees bud. I watch the trees because that tells me that spring is really here. A lot of people go to the store, they see all the flowers out, they put their flowers out on their front porch and they freeze. I wait until my trees bud before I put any flowers outside because they will not bud if there's going to be another frost, another freeze, something that is 20 degrees. Hi guys. We're down here in our maple kitchen, and this is where we can make, in good years we can make up to 200 gallons of syrup down here. Unfortunately, we may be making about, 30 gallons of syrup. So the way it works is we have collected the sap now, and we've put it in the tanks on the trekker. We drive up to the house. We have a hose that goes to this hose that's attached out in the garage. And then we attach another hose to this, and we can put it right into the tanks so that we don't have to carry those gallons of syrup down here. And on this stove then we've got this hood that takes all the steam out, and this boils. When we get this completely full, and then there's another pan just like it, that if we had a lot of sap, we'd have two pans going together. Each pan holds 20 gallons of sap. 20 gallons of sap is not even going to make 1 gallon of syrup. So what we'll do is we'll fill the tank twice. As it's boiling down, we'll bring it up again. So we'll try to get 1 gallon of syrup out of each tank. When it gets down to a certain point, then we take this ladle, we'll take the ladle, and we'll dip out syrup and we'll put it in our measuring. This is how we measure viscosity. This is a viscosity measurement hygrometer. So we put the syrup in here, and it has to be warm. There's two different ones where it's when it's like 140 degrees or 210 degrees. And you put this in, and if it floats and it comes to the line, then it's ready to be filtered. So then we pour it, we open the spigot here, we pour it into a pail, and then we pour it through the filter. And I have a ladder I climb up here with my, and I pour it into this filter, and then it filters down into a pan. So I only do one pan at a time so I don't overfill. So we let it filter, and this will be the amount of syrup that'll come out of one of those tanks. So it'll fill up to about here with, when we've put in about 40 to 45 gallons of sap. When it's all boiled down and filtered, it will only make about that much syrup. So it takes a long time. Then when it's filtered, then you'll get clear syrup down here. When it's in the tank, it's a little cloudy, and we filter it, and this is the stuff that comes out of it. This is called maple sugar sand, and so it's, as you're boiling the water down, boiling the sap down, it starts condensing the minerals, and it's kind of like chalk, but it's mostly calcium, and that's what's filtered out and caught in here. And some people, the old-fashioned way, the way the Indians used to do it, is they would just put it in a tank, and then all this stuff would settle down at the bottom, and they would just take the syrup off the top. They wouldn't use that. They'd feed animals with that. We filter it because we want to put it in a bottle and use the whole thing. We don't want gritty sand on our pancakes. So when we're done with that, then we take it and we put it in a different pot, because this is a multi-process, because we have to boil it, we have to bottle it when it's hot. So we put it in a pot like this. We'll put this back on the stove, and it's got a thermometer, and we bring it up to about just a little over 200 degrees, and then we can pour it right into the bottles and seal the bottles right up. And that means that they will be sealed. It's a vacuum seal, because as it cools down, it draws a vacuum on it, and that will keep, if you keep it in a cool place, like in a dark cabinet or something, that'll keep for years, as long as you don't break the seal. Once you break the seal, then you need to keep it in the refrigerator, because it can get moldy. So these are the kinds of bottles that we bottle it in. We have all different kinds. We have fancy leaf bottles, but if you see on the shelf, there's just different kinds of bottles. So we have customers that like the fancy leaf bottles, But some of them just like just plain old jugs. I can show you something. We are very, our family recycles. We are very conservative, so I bought new lids. I bought the new lids, but these are the bottles you get juice in at the store. So we recycle our own bottles, and they make great bottles for our syrup. But we buy the other ones. But if you look at these, some of these bottles I have to buy new lids, but some of these bottles had other products in them. We find that we recycle as much as recycle, reuse. That's our motto. So we encourage our customers to do the same thing. Okay, we can go everything. It's in this pot. Now we need to find out, because we're going to bottle it, we need to know what color it is, what grade is it. And so the grade happens because as you concentrate the sap, it gets darker and darker. And you put a little sample in here. So I take a sample out of the pot, I'll put it in here, and then we have to compare. And we put it in this thing, and we look at it, we look through it. If it's lighter than this, or the same color, we can call it light. But if it's just a little bit darker, then it has to go up to the next grade. And if you look at these two, one says light, it's light, it's this color or lighter. This one says medium, because when I put it in the bottle, it was just a little bit darker. Even though they're almost the same. You have to be very careful that you grade properly. Now the difference in maple syrup is that the light maple syrup has a very delicate flavor. It's the first sap that comes out of the tree at the beginning of the year. It's just a very delicate maple. It's sweet. As it gets darker, as the season goes on, there's more maple stuff in the sap, and it gets a little darker and it's a little bit more robust. And if most of our customers like either the medium or the dark because it's got a stronger maple flavor, for me, I've gotten spoiled. I like the very light because I like just that delicate flavor. And then there's extra dark, and a lot of people will use the extra dark if they're making a marinade, if they want something that has a stronger flavor and they want the maple flavor to come out, because the dark is what happens at the very end of the season, just as the trees are budding. You saw the sap was clear. As the season goes on, the sap gets a color. It starts turning a little bit cloudy, it gets a little yellow. By the end of the season, you can tell it's the end of the season, it looks like apple juice. That's the color it is when it comes out of the tree. And that's when the trees bud. And as soon as the buds are there, the sap stops running, the season's over.